The security guard tried to stop her until the Secret Service cleared the hall for her. A true story. There are mornings that feel like any other morning. The sky is the same pale gray it always is in November. The coffee in the lobby cart smells the same. The security guards are at their posts. The flags are still. Nothing about the day gives you any sign that something worth remembering is about to happen. This was one of those mornings. It was a Tuesday in Washington, D.C., early enough that the streets were still half empty, but inside a large federal building near the center of the city, things were already moving fast. A major international summit was taking place. Dozens of high-level officials had flown in from across the world. Diplomats, ministers, senior advisors. The kind of gathering where everything is planned down to the minute, and everyone knows exactly where they are supposed to be. The hallways were marble. The air was cool and still, the way it always is in buildings designed to feel important. Security personnel were stationed at every entrance, every checkpoint, every turn in the corridor. Some were in uniform. Some wore plain clothes and earpieces, and moved like they were always listening to something nobody else could hear. It was, in short, the kind of place where you do not go unnoticed, or so everyone assumed. A woman came through the main entrance at 7:43 in the morning. She came alone, no assistant, no aide carrying her bag, no security escort walking 3 steps behind her. She was wearing a charcoal gray coat, simple and well-fitted. Her hair was natural, silver locks pinned back neatly. On the lapel of her coat, if you looked closely enough, was a very small pin, an American flag, the kind you might overlook unless you knew to look for it. She carried a single leather bag. It was worn at the handles in the way that bags only get when you have taken them with you everywhere for years. She did not look nervous. She did not look hurried. She moved through the entrance the way a person moves through a place they know well, not looking around to get their bearings, not checking a phone for directions. Just walking, steadily, toward the far end of the corridor. Most of the people in that hallway did not look twice at her. That, in a way, was the whole problem. The people who drew attention in that building did so by design. Big lanyards, busy assistants, loud greetings between people who had not seen each other since the last summit. The people who mattered announced themselves, one way or another. And this woman was announcing nothing. She was simply there, moving quietly through the marble hallway, like a person with somewhere to be. At the main corridor checkpoint, the one that separated the outer lobby from the inner wing where the summit rooms were, a young security guard stepped forward. He was 24, maybe 25. His uniform was pressed and his posture was straight. He had been doing this job for 2 years, and he took it seriously. He was the kind of person who notices things, which is exactly what you want in a security guard. The problem was not that he was paying attention. The problem was what his attention had been trained to look for. He looked at the woman. No visible badge, no escort, no lanyard. She had not stopped at the outer desk to check in. She had not announced herself. She was simply walking toward a door that most people did not walk through without someone waving them in first. He stepped in front of her and held up one hand. "Excuse me," he said, polite, firm. "Are you with the catering team?" He was not being cruel. That matters. He was not trying to embarrass anyone or make a point. He was working with the picture in his head of who looked like they belonged in that hallway, and something had not matched. So he stopped her, the way he had been trained to stop anyone whose credentials he could not immediately confirm. The woman stopped. She did not make a sound. She did not exhale sharply or cross her arms or look away. She just stopped walking and turned to look at him, full and calm. The kind of look that is almost harder to receive than anger, because anger, you know how to respond to. This was something else. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. It felt longer. A few people nearby had slowed down. A woman in a blue blazer, mid-conversation, had gone quiet. A man further down the hallway had stopped pretending to check his phone. No one said anything. Everyone was watching, without wanting to look like they were watching. The woman reached into the inside pocket of her coat. Slowly, deliberately. She was not nervous about this. She had done it before. She knew what was in that pocket, and she knew what it meant, and she was not in a hurry about any of it. She pulled out a card. Single card. Plain, small, the kind of thing that fits easily in a palm. She held it out. The guard took it. He looked at it. His face changed. It is hard to describe exactly what that change looked like, but anyone who was watching would have seen it. Something behind his eyes shifted. His jaw moved slightly, like he was working through a sentence in his head that kept coming out wrong. His eyes went from the card to her face, then back to the card, then to her face again. He reached for his radio. The call he made was short, official, the kind of call where you are asking a question and hoping, quietly, that the answer is going to make everything make sense. There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice responded. Brief, clear, absolutely certain. The guard straightened up. His whole posture changed. Not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies, just a small reset, like someone had turned a dial somewhere. His shoulders settled. He held the card out with both hands and waited for her to take it back. I apologize, he said, quietly. She took the card. She put it back in her coat pocket. Then, within the next 90 seconds, the hallway transformed. 2 agents appeared from a side door that most people had not noticed was even there. They were not running. They were not shouting. They were simply present, suddenly, in the way that people who are very good at their jobs can be present. Like they had been there the whole time, and you had just not been looking in the right direction. One of them touched his earpiece briefly and said something that nobody nearby could hear. The other moved to the far end of the corridor and stood there. And then the hall was cleared. Not loudly, not with any kind of announcement. Aides who had been standing near the walls drifted back. A small cluster of officials near the door stepped to the side. A path opened up, from where the woman was standing all the way to the door of the summit room at the far end. Because she was late. She had been due inside that room 7 minutes ago, and for the last several of those minutes, she had been standing at a checkpoint in her own building, waiting for the world to catch up with who she was. She buttoned the top button of her coat. She looked at the guard one final time. And here is the part that people who were there would talk about afterward. The part that stuck with them even months and years later. She nodded at him. One slow, quiet nod, not sarcastic, not triumphant. The kind of nod you give someone when you want them to know that you are not holding this against them, that you understand, that you are moving on, and you are giving them permission to do the same. Then she walked, down the cleared corridor, past the watching faces, past the marble pillars and the silk flags, and the people who had just watched something happen that they would describe differently depending on who they were and what they had seen in their own lives. Her footsteps were steady, her head was up, her face gave nothing away, except, maybe, purpose. She put her hand on the door of the summit room and pushed it open. The room was full, a long conference table, high-backed chairs, water glasses catching the light, name placards in English, and 3 other languages. Foreign ministers, senior undersecretaries of state, advisors who had spent their careers getting to a table like this one. They had been waiting. When she walked in, they stood. Not because anyone told them to, not because protocol required it, because she was the person this meeting had been built around, and she was finally in the room. 40 minutes later, the guard, his name was Darius, was sitting in the staff break room with a sandwich he had not touched. One of his colleagues came in, looked at him, poured herself a cup of coffee. "You all right?" she asked. He took a second to answer. "I stopped her at the checkpoint." His colleague looked at him. "Stopped who?" "The special envoy. I thought she was catering." A long pause. "What did she do?" his colleague asked. Darius thought about it. "She looked at me," he said. "That's it. She just looked at me, like she wasn't even surprised, like she had been through this so many times before that she already knew how it was going to go. And then? And then the whole hallway got cleared for her. 2 agents, a path straight to the door. Everyone just moved." He stared at his hands, and she still nodded at me. After all of it, she nodded at me like she was letting me off the hook. His colleague sat down across from him. "I keep thinking," Darius said, "about the fact that she has probably had that happen to her before, maybe dozens of times, maybe more, and she still chose to just nod and keep walking. She didn't make it a thing. She didn't even look angry." He finally picked up his sandwich. "I don't know if I could have done that." His colleague did not answer. There was not much to say, but Darius was right about one thing. He would think about that nod for a very long time. Later that day, in the back of a car moving through afternoon traffic, the woman's assistant gently brought up the checkpoint incident. He had heard about it by then. Word had traveled, the way word does in buildings full of people with nothing to do between meetings. "Would you like to put in a report?" he asked. Careful, giving her the option without pushing. She looked out the window. Outside, the city moved past in its usual rhythm. Office workers walking fast, a taxi cutting across 2 lanes, a woman with a stroller waiting at a crosswalk. "No," she said. "Are you certain?" What happened was, "I'm certain." She did not look away from the window. He was a young man doing his job with the information he had. "That's not who I'm interested in holding accountable." Her assistant waited. "The information is the problem," she said. "The picture people carry in their heads of who looks like they belong in a certain hallway, behind a certain door, at a certain table. That picture does not change because one person files a report. It changes slowly, over time, because of the work, the meetings, the decisions made in rooms like the one I was in today." She finally turned from the window. "That's what I'm here for." She thought briefly about her mother, a woman who had spent 30 years cleaning federal buildings, who had pushed a mop down corridors like the one her daughter had just walked through as a guest of the government, who had told her daughter, again and again, that she needed to walk into every room like she already belonged there, not because the room would always agree, but because the belief had to come from inside first. Her mother had never been wrong about that. The car moved through traffic. The city kept going, the way cities do, and she was already thinking about tomorrow, the follow-up calls, the next set of negotiations, the next room that would not know who she was until she walked into it. She had never needed a room to know her name before she arrived. She only needed to know it herself. What stays with you about this story is not the Secret Service. It is not the cleared hallway. It is not even the room full of foreign ministers rising to their feet. It is the nod. One quiet nod from a woman who had every reason to be furious and chose something harder. She chose grace. She chose to keep walking. Because some people are so certain of who they are that the world's confusion about it is, ultimately, the world's problem to solve.